Go.
You ready? Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. You'll see on the TV screens, we have the phone numbers up there for the public access phone number for the council work session and meeting number. If you want to jot those down and have a call in later, you can if you have a question. If it's the issue is pertaining to you directly, or if you're invited to speak. Sorry. This is the city council work session agenda for Monday, April 27th, Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. This proposed meeting will be, or proposed regular agenda meeting for May 4th, 2020. I am going to start over. I'm not going to do this all day. Last week, I read everything that was on the packet because Kathleen did not initial it, and I was worn out at the end of the meeting. So I apologize to my fellow council members. I didn't get a chance to speak more. First up on the regular agenda is proclamations. First one is a proclamation for municipal, I can't say that word, City Clerks Week, Kathleen Salisbury. She's not here. Building Safety Month, Eric Tislin. Do you have anything to say on that at this point? No? And Kids to the Parks Day, Eric Tislin. Okay, second will be a public hearing, consideration of an ordinance amendment to the ordinance number 3220, an ordinance creating the Sunrise West Plan Unit Development PUD Overlay District by removing Outlot G from the Sunrise West PUD. This will be the first reading. Mr. Tislin, please.
So numbers 1 and 2 somewhat go together. This lot, Outlot G, is currently in the Sunrise West PUD area, so it's governed by those plan unit development requirements. It is looking to go out of the Sunrise West PUD so that it can go into the Beverly Place PUD, which is the second item. Not sure which item should be first here, but this is somewhat straightforward. They just want to take this out so that it can be combined with the lot to the northwest of it and form the Beverly Place PUD. But I guess depending on what you're doing with the second one, this one could come out of the Sunrise West PUD regardless. They don't foresee developing this or Sunrise West any further. They wanted to sell the lot.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? All right, want to move on to number 3, which is a public hearing, consideration of ordinance rezoning lot 4, the Swisher subdivision, and Outlot G of the 4th edition of Sunrise West subdivision from R1, single-family residential, to R4, multifamily residential, with a planned unit development overlay zone, Beverly Place PUD, as allowed by zoning code of the city of Burlington, Iowa. This will be the first reading.
So many of you probably remember seeing some signs on Mason Road for the Beverly Place development. They are not pursuing that any further. That was kind of down here in the corner, just south of Edstone School and the vacant lot owned by the church there. They're now looking at these 2 lots in the Sunrise West area and just south of the Park West subdivision with Horizon Street. So they're looking to rezone this lot to R4 with a PUD overlay that has some stipulations. Currently it's R1 to the west, R2 to the north. Sunrise West is all R4, and then the area below it is a combination of R1 and R4, all with a PUD overlay. So this did go to the Planning Commission on last Tuesday, April 21st, and Planning Commission recommended approval of this rezoning 5-1 with 1 abstain, based on the request and plans of the property owners and developer, compatible uses in the surrounding area, looking at a similar type development to the Village Cooperative there on Mason Road, a little larger scale, different layout, but similar concept as far as what type of housing they're going to provide and size. And then the connection of public streets that we'll get into here as well. They did recommend approval with the condition that the proposed private drive through the developments be connected with the first phase of the development, and have a few maps here to go through. Originally, they were looking to have full connection between the Gilbert Street extension on the north up here, and then Cambridge Drive towards the end of the phase development, but they're looking to develop that all at once now. So as I'm going through some of the conditions here, this is what their preliminary site plan looks like. So they're looking at 3 separate buildings, 3 phases. So connecting Horizon Street down over to Dill Street, and then Gilbert Street over to the east, which would allow future connection. This land owned by Mr. Jerry Van Varen, still undeveloped, but that is planned to have a connection over to Gilbert Street in the Sunrise West area, and then can connect down to Cambridge here to connect up the streets a little further. They would have a private drive in the center of the development, with 3 separate buildings starting on the north side and then working their way south. They generally build the buildings when they have 60% sales, approximately, pre-sales, and they feel pretty confident on that. Looking at a landscape buffer on the west side and the south side, 50-foot wide. This is similar concept to what's behind the Fairway store on Lawrence Drive. They have a landscape buffer behind that as well to kind of buffer the commercial to the residential, and here buffering the single-family residential to the multifamily residential. The PUD area would be zoned R4 to allow multifamily and or assisted living type facilities and any accessory uses to support that. They did have kind of a gathering or activity center on site as well, so they're looking at different amenities that they can provide on site. Some of the other provisions of the PUD would be a maximum height of 4 stories and a maximum height of 55 feet. Currently in the R1 or R3 area, R1 to R3 area, it's 2.5 story and 35 feet. In R4, it's 3 story and 45 feet. And then for every foot or every story you add on to that, it's an additional 1 foot of side yard separation. So currently, if you're 4 stories, it requires 11 feet of side yard separation. The setbacks that they're proposing are, so they have the 50-foot landscape buffer and then an additional 50-foot setback from that landscape buffer. So 100 feet off the west property line, 50-foot buffer, and then 25 feet additional setback, so 75 feet off the southern property line, and then 25 feet for all the principal structures on from every other property line. For buildings that are 1 through 3 stories, and then any 4-story buildings, that's an additional 25 feet. I know one of the comments we received at the Planning Commission from 1 or 2 individuals here on this side was the size and proximity of the tall building to their backyard. This would be 4 times the typical rear yard setback that's required by code. So originally they had 75 feet from this property line. After the Planning Commission and based on some of those comments, they increased it an additional 25 feet to give that added protection and security that no building would be within 100 feet of their rear yard. So I will say the Planning Commission, we had probably 15 individuals comment so through this type of meeting. So probably 75-80% were, I think all of them were in favor of it. The couple that had voiced concerns about it was closeness of a 4-story building and then what that does to the stormwater in the area. They're looking to have underground parking, so they have to address stormwater in the area. If they don't, then their building will be full of water. So that's something that they take very seriously. They are having flat roofs, so the height of these buildings, even though they're 4 stories, will be very similar, approximately equal to the Village Cooperative, that's 3 stories. And then they have that additional setback. The street connections.
Eric, real quick, just to back you up, they're putting a retention pond in, right?
Yep.
And just based on the size of that retention pond, is it safe to assume that if there were any major rain events, that retention pond's going to absorb a majority of the impact that's going to have on the
They're going
sewer
to
system?
direct water to the system, and Nick has an item here later on that some of this will probably be directed towards, but they're having kind of a water feature here that'll function a little bit as stormwater, but then additional storm detention here on the southeast corner. And that's required through the plating and building process to meet all our engineering requirements. They don't provide that engineering up front because it costs a lot of money and survey data to do that until they know if they're rezoned or not. But that would be required prior to moving forward with any construction.
Eric, can you point out with your clicker where the private drive goes on there?
So this is, they're showing Horizon Street, that's Dan Cahill's development off
Okay.
of West Avenue, coming down and then going over to Dill Street, and then Gilbert Street going over. So this, at this point, would be all private drive.
Okay.
They'd install, they would have to maintain. They have, I guess there was some comments on whether that should be a public street from a couple in the audience. They'd prefer to maintain it private just so that they can control a little bit more speed, having buildings on both sides of the development and then having amenities such as activity center and a pond over here. They don't want faster traffic going through and maybe on-street parking or anything, so they want to maintain that as private. A couple other items within the PUD. Again, the 50-foot wide landscape buffer, it spells out in the PUD the type of plantings and the amount of plantings that they have to provide in that. They are looking to retain as much of the existing overstory growth that's there. They want to maintain those large trees if along the perimeter that they can. And then with this plan, it does not connect Sequoia over to the west, just based on the layout. They are looking to include a 5-foot wide walking path from Cambridge Drive within this landscape buffer to the existing sidewalk on Sequoia. So you have that pedestrian access east to west throughout this development as well. That would be installed and maintained by them, but would be open to the public for walking on, which connects back to the bike trail and everything else. So that's the proposed layout. And one of the, we'll talk about further, one of the additional comments was just what's the best layout of streets in here. There's not a great layout regardless. All these kind of developments are converging on the center part, and how do you connect all these streets that are offset and off-centered from each other. But they're looking to, again, connect up Dill, which could connect down to Aspen, or I think it's Willow by the school, and then get over to Sequoia. Eventually, we would have a connection over to Gilbert, east-west through the site, and then the north-south Cambridge Drive through the site, but until that property owner develops, that likely would not occur. This is the phase plan for their development. So the light blue or light greenish blue is what they're looking to do first. So constructing these public streets, the private drive, so there'd be through access for emergency personnel. And then this building here, that's phase 1A, I guess, and then this darker blue is phase 1B. They hope to construct those potentially even at the same time, but maybe staggered a little bit. And then the larger building, the orange and pink, could be phase 2 and phase 3 as they continue to sell the development. This is a preliminary rendering or schematic of the building, the primary building, that phase 2 and 3, the largest building. Again, all the buildings on this west side would have underground parking, as you see the drives coming in and through. This northern building, they're looking for a little lower price point on it, so it's all just surface parking, but similar design and concept, just not that underground parking. But this is the concept they're proposing with outdoor decks, again, the flat roof, trying to do as much landscaping and green infrastructure as they can. I think one individual had mentioned they've been on the waiting list at Village Cooperative for 4 years and see the demand for this type of development. So something they're hopeful can move through the process, but could be a 2 to 3 year development, just depending on demand.
Hi, Eric, is that trees or gardens on the top on that one shot?
They show some trees, kind of a rooftop garden or area. So again, one of the primary comments was the street connections in the area. When Mr. Cahill developed his, by city code, we don't allow cul-de-sacs unless absolutely necessary. He was required to put in a stub that will connect to this. This was the 1999 plan for the area that showed some street connections in the area, connecting West Avenue and Mason Road. As it's developed, this is that same exact plan shown on an aerial. Hasn't quite followed that path, but it has provided some additional connections with Sequoia connecting to Willow. It allowed that through access with Cambridge coming down. It won't have a straight north-south access, but based on that plan, a lot of this has changed slightly. It will still allow connection over to Aspen and over to Sequoia, and then eventually down to Cambridge to have those through connections from west to Mason Road. And these were just some options when Mr. Kale's developing, looking at how could we connect up. But again, based on what they're proposing and kind of how it's developed in that area, this is how they're looking to connect the streets.
Does anybody have any questions?
I think I asked him as we went.
This was the project originally was gonna go just west of the airport, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so that kinda helps us a little bit there.
Yeah,
Good.
they felt too constricted to get all that they have there based on the height requirements and then not being able to do a couple of the extra buildings and amenities on site.
Fantastic.
But I would imagine we'll have quite a few people interested in it. And like I said, most were all supportive of it, just had those few concerns on stormwater and then how the streets connect and what's the best way. And I think there's a lot of different options there, but this is what's being presented.
Okay. No other questions for Eric on that one? All right, we're gonna move on.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Next up is public hearing, consideration of ordinance vacating and selling a portion of Connor Avenue right-of-way located north of Course Street, Burlington, Iowa, first reading. Nick, is that you?
I just gotta pull it
Eric?
back.
God, you're working hard today. He's done taking a back seat to everybody else.
All right. So this is, as you recall, Carly and Nelson vacated the alley right away through here. I don't remember if that was beginning of this year, end of last year, and then the east-west portion. Upon completion of that project, they realized they were wanting to combine all their lots into one. This Connor Avenue right-of-way was shown as owned by Carly and Nelson on the county records, and they've been paying taxes on it for the last number of years, but the county could not find any record that it had actually been vacated by the city. In order to combine all the lots, they asked that it formally be vacated by the city. So we brought this through the planning commission process. As it's brought to our attention, they voted 6-0 to recommend approval. If you see in the ordinance, we do not recommend any payment for transfer of this, as they've been paying taxes on it for the last 10 years. They just want it cleaned up. They do own every individual lot, east, west, north, and south of this. So they just want to vacate this so they can combine their property into one large lot.
Didn't we just approve a project here, a stormwater project on this lot? Is there any bearing on this? We're not
It's
gonna
on
have to
the
pay
end of
easements out or
Virginia.
anything, are we?
Talked to Jesse that they're working with them on all the easements necessary for that.
But we're not gonna have to pay easements out or anything like that for work to be done out there? Okay.
No.
Yeah, I don't wanna give it to them and then turn around
No.
and have to write them a
Yeah.
$500 check because we're gonna tear it up, so.
Any questions for Eric on that one, gang? Okay.
Does that also on the north side connect to the alleyway that the resident that lives to the north of them? You remember they come in and they talked about how they use that alleyway and it was tore up, and that's all part of that same.
That was part of the previous area of vacation, so that's what they were wanting to make improvements on and repave.
Do you know if they ever followed through on that?
I was by Des Moines Avenue, but I didn't look down.
I've been down there, they have been working on it, they tore down some structures, and so I think they're proceeding with
Just
that,
being a good neighbor?
yeah. Any other questions on that one? Okay, moving on. Next up, public hearing, consideration of an ordinance amending various sections of chapter 161, Housing Code of the City of Burlington Municipal Code, first reading. Mr. Tislin, once again.
Yeah, so this update brings our housing code, which is chapter 161 of the city code, where we have the provisions for rental properties. When we inspect rental properties, we inspect to the housing code of the city of Burlington. But this brings carbon monoxide and smoke alarm detection language in line with the International Residential Code. That's what we enforce now. So these aren't new provisions. It's currently required under the housing code, but it's kind of ambiguous in how it's written, and we want to make sure it falls in line with the International Residential Code, so that we're referencing that, which is required for new construction. We've had some questions on hardwire smoke detectors where they're already existing. If they take them out and just put in battery-powered detectors, that's not allowed, but it's kind of ambiguous and it's a little more clear in the International Residential Code. So just going to the language from the International Residential Code, not adding any new requirements. The one thing under 16104 that we did add was, as we talked before, if we send notice to someone that they need to get a rental permit because it's a rental property and they fail to do so within 30 days, then their rental fees would be doubled. With that individual that was at the council meeting a month or so ago asking about that. So that's something we're wanting to enact as we continue that process.
Everybody needs to play by the same rules. Yep, sounds good. Any questions?
So the rental permit is typically what, and it will double?
It's based on number of units.
Okay.
So it, yeah, for a single family, I believe it's 2. Yeah. We just changed it, 150? Yeah, yep. We do have language in here currently for a double permit if they don't pay within 30 days for a valid rental, but this also just makes it clear if you have a property that's used as a rental and you don't comply with our notice, then your fees could be doubled as well. So we just want people to comply.
Okay,
Sounds good.
thank you, Rick. Next up, number 6, resolution awarding contract for the 2020 Central Avenue HMA resurfacing project. Mr. McGregor.
Good evening. On Tuesday last week, we did bid opening for the Central Street overlay project. This project, just to give you a reminder of what it is an asphalt overlay where we would go in and mill the surface and replace it from Harrison Street to Angular. We had 3 responding bidders. Norris Asphalt Paving was the low bidder at $792,848. The estimate was $880,000, so it's good to see a bid come in like that. We had the next one was within $10,000, so we know we have some pretty good, idea that those bids are pretty true. We had Norris Asphalt work on Mount Pleasant Street, so we've worked with them recently. So we're confident in the work that they can get the job done. We know who the subcontractor is to do any patching, so we shouldn't run into some of the issues that we did with the patch work that happened on Mount Pleasant Street.
Who ran the Mount Pleasant Street project?
The Mount Pleasant Street asphalt, Norris did, but the problem was their subcontractor. It was the same crew that did the DOT patching on Highway 61 most recently.
I thought it could.
So that could offer some explanation as to some of the things that you saw and I saw happen during that project. The money is funded from our general obligation monies out of our R&R program. I would recommend approving contract.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Nick on that one? No, thank you, Nick. Moving on. On the proposed consent agenda, number 1 is a resolution approving final acceptance and final payment and release of retention monies for the 2018 Mount Pleasant Street Bridge project. Nick.
After much conversation between the contractor and the DOT, we've reached to a point of conclusion on this project. The construction was completed last summer. There was some details about some of the concrete and then some of the BNSF charges. But the final as-built cost for the construction part of it is $4.25,663. We have some other costs that aren't seen in your memo. We hired out engineering for both the design and in the inspection. Stanley Consultants is the ones that did that. Their total contract award and paid out to date is $866,000. So we're just over $5 million on that contract, or to build the bridge. We have some other things that will probably be realized with some internal engineering, some administration type work that Jesse had to do. This project had just over $1 million grant. We did not receive the full grant award because of some of the concrete conversation. That price was also reduced out of the contractor's dollar figure, so there is some slump numbers that were off per spec of the DOT. So what happens is they reduce the number that the contractor is paid for that concrete, but then in turn is also taken out of the portion that we receive from grant funding. So yes, we received less grant funding, but we also didn't pay out the coordinating monies. So we didn't lose money per se, we just didn't receive the amount that we end up paying out.
So for the layperson though, the bridge is still good?
Correct. It's minor, you know, percentage of inches of slump, and slump isn't going to have anything to do with the structural integrity of the
Okay.
bridge.
Any questions? No. Number 2, resolution approving the purchase of property PIN 16-07-176-001 for future Mason Road storm water improvements.
This resolution would purchase a piece of property of which there was no map in the packet, and I apologize, there should have been. So the property proposed to purchase for $27,500 is the corner piece owned there off of Mason Road, just to the north of the airport, and just north of where our current retention pond is. That retention pond service is Mason Road, and some of the adjoining developments. At times, when we have heavy rain events, the piping and the retention pond are overwhelmed. All this involves to this point is just purchasing the property. We would have to design a project in coming years. But it's definitely a needed piece of property to be able to expand that retention pond. We should be able to get quite a bit more size out of that pond by moving it further to the north. With that project, we'll also have to upsize some pipe that comes off of the north side of Mason Road and feeds into it. So we had an appraisal done. The appraised price for this property was $29,500. It's within reason, so I would recommend approval of purchasing this property.
Okay. Any questions for Nick on that one, gang? No. Moving on. Resolution establishing solid waste fees effective July 1st, 2020. Is Mr. Fitting here for that, or is that you, Steph? Mrs. Stuber, how are you?
So this is the resolution approving the increase in the fees. It was 25 cent per month per cart size is really the only change. The tag fee is the same. And then the $35 service charge to change cart sizes is the same. So this will be effective July 1st. It was what was approved in the budget for FY '21.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions? No? Jim?
Separate topic, and I don't know if he wants to chime in, and this isn't really an agenda part, but
Okay.
We've been waiving the fee on an extra bag, and it's gone through the end of May, or end of April. Now with the extension, where the governor is at, we'll have to have a discussion whether we're extending that a couple more weeks. But that also, that extension in and of itself is gonna put solid waste at a position for citywide cleanup. We're out of time on the
Yeah.
spring side.
Yeah.
There may be a spot where the council wants to have a discussion about whether we do a fall cleanup in its place and what that schedule might look like and what would happen. But I think we need to be thinking through the fact that we're out of time to get that done this spring.
Well, that's one of the reasons for the extra bag too, is to be able to throw
Yes.
away the small items, so.
Yes.
Well,
Do a lot of people take advantage of that?
You've got some tonnage.
I have too.
It hasn't been going on for too long, but it appears to us, based on the numbers that we've looked at, like the first couple of weeks, we were averaging about 27 tons more per week than what we normally were taking in, which equates to around $1,450 in tipping fees. We are seeing probably more 33-gallon cans than we are bags. Because they're in cans, the crews can see the material that's in what's being thrown away. As one might expect, a lot of it has been small items like you would typically see with citywide cleanup. But it's like I said, we're getting about 27 tons
Okay.
extra per week.
Compared to normal pickup time?
We're normally somewhere around 110 to 115 ton per week. So what's that? a little bit more than 25%.
Okay. Well, that was the thought, is that maybe they would, use the bag issue for some small items and gently push them that way, but.
Yeah.
Are you getting a lot of requests, Dawn, for people to change can sizes now that maybe their lifestyle is disrupted?
We have, and by far, the majority of people step up in size. I had obtained a quote from our supplier for 65s because our numbers were getting down on the 65s to where we have to allow for delay and when the delivery would be made. I didn't want to run out, but we've had an onslaught of people who have 65s moving to 95s. So now we have probably about 20 to 30 more 65s returned back to us. Our inventory of 65s isn't near where I would normally be considering processing an order. And our 95s, we have sufficient numbers there where we're not quite ready to place an order for 95s, but it'll be interesting to see which horse wins that race, if we have to go 95s or 65s or actually both. But by far, the majority of people are upsizing their carts.
Any questions for Dawn, gang?
No, so somebody moves or rents another residence, then the can is switched for free?
Well, the cart stays with the residence that you are leaving. That's assigned to that address. You go to a new address within the city, and if the cart size isn't what you would like, you can call and have an exchange made at no cost to the customer. But that needs to be done relatively quickly. We usually use like 30 days as the cutoff, that they need to make up their mind that they want to go to a different size cart than is assigned to that address.
Okay.
Now, I guess I wasn't sure when you were asking about the program as far as the extra bag or can. Are you then looking at extending that beyond the end of April? Is that a question that they're going to have to address? I guess that's within the powers of the mayor to make a declaration.
That's one that we've done a couple of times now, and I probably want to speak with the mayor if he wanted to do that. Again, I would see potentially doing 2 more weeks through May 15, and then that kind of matches. We're about to the point where school is out. I mean, like, I know our school typically would be done a week later than that. Other schools are 2 weeks after that. And I think that's about the time where we're going to start seeing things open up here.
Well, and part of
being
it,
optimistic on that.
yeah, I mean, part of it was kids being home, but also as parents are home cooking and that type of thing, or carry-out containers. So I would, not think about it, but my opinion, and council please weigh in as we go to May 15th, or to mirror what the governor's order is. That's what I would say, which.
Well, the governor's order is gonna be staggered approach. I
Yeah.
mean, it could be another, I hope not, but it could be another 6 months. depending
Well, no, I mean, as far as opening, like what she's done today, May 1st, those counties are opening stuff.
How many, you may not have this, any idea how many people are taking advantage of it?
Well, you're asking, no. I mean, we're talking about 27% more tonnage, an extra bag or an extra can. So does that mean 25% of the people are putting out an extra 33-gallon container?
Yeah.
This is something I've been thinking about, and I know Dawn won't like it, but hear me out. Since we did away with spring cleanup, and people do have extra trash, and people are dumping it. I mean, we know they are. They're dumping it in the recycling bins and everything else. I wondered if possibly we could waive the fee for them to change the can size, if that would help. Not for a long period of time, can't open it up all summer. They're just gonna waive it. We realize you have more trash. We don't want you dumping it. We don't want you dumping it in the recycling bins. Just an idea I had. I know it creates more work for you and your staff.
Well, it's the same amount of work, it's just that you don't have the revenue that comes with it, and of course, there may be more interest if they're not paying a $35
I mean, the whole point of allowing the extra 33-gallon container was to accomplish that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
accomplish that.
recommend doing a
No.
wave fee on that, that's just gonna be.
I agree, it generates more
Nightmare.
revenue, I give you that one,
Well,
but
I'm
we're
not
also
after-
generating more
That's not
trash.
after revenue, that's
Yeah.
just a process that we've already done something to try to accommodate that.
Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, you're losing the $4 per bag by doing the free bags, so.
Yeah, we're not after the revenue. The revenue isn't the purpose, but waiving that fee on that change is a piece of that's about a long-term change in people's habits, and we do want to try to still cover that. This is a temporary thing, and the 33-gallon is a temporary thing to try to do that. I mean, but if you want to change rate structures, you can, but that's more one of those longer-term things that's about what's the long-term thing or best interest of the program.
You're
I
talking
just
about-
wouldn't recommend it.
You're talking about only waiving the exchange fee.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of trash, I mean, I'm hearing reports about it everywhere.
There is, I've seen a lot of.
It's bad.
Social media has been lit up the last couple of weeks with people highlighting other people dumping, especially in the county areas. I don't know if COVID-19 is a result of that as much as the lack of spring cleanup may be the result of that.
Probably a combination
Well,
of things.
a couple of pictures I've seen were, that trash has been there a while. I guess where I'm at on it, we did this to try to help our residents out, but much like everything else that's going on with COVID-19, eventually it's got this extension of free bags, it's got to end.
Yeah.
We just can't sustain it, and so that's why I would push for May 15th is when it looks like we're gonna, maybe Des Moines County will finally get the order to go back somewhat to normal, and I would anticipate that that's when we would stop accepting the extra bag. And the advantage about allowing the extra bag, because it is going to push off the spring cleanup, is people, sounds like they heard us and they took advantage of that and started throwing away some of the smaller things that Don's professed all along. So, we'll see, but at this point in time, I wouldn't be in favor of changing any rate structures. I would be probably tentatively saying, hey, May 15th, that's the target date for our county by the state, and I would say that some of the extra things that we've done for our citizens would stop at that point in time. So that's my opinion where I'm at. Any other thoughts? Concerns, questions?
No, I just wish we had a better way of getting that message out. I'm not sure the people that need to be putting the extra bag out are hearing the message. I think they're the ones putting it where they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So if
Don-
anybody's got any ideas on how to relay that information.
What was the reasoning for, I know we're outside of the springtime for the cleanup dates, but we wanted to push them to the fall. Was there a reason we couldn't do them in the summer? I'm sure you've already addressed this, but I didn't remember it.
Well, summertime is the time, our crew members do like to take vacations. Families take vacations with kids. Maybe they go out of town, of course, with current such situation, I don't know where they're gonna go. But basically, the community is more mobile. Crew members take their vacations at times when there's not specialty programs. I guess, other than that, I guess, you can have a program anytime you choose to do so. The fall program, if we choose to do a fall program, which is something that I'm not in favor of, but I understand public pressure and I guess social media. We have people who are calling and using the tag program for bulky items. I have not inquired of the landfill to see whether they're having more traffic at the landfill with people bringing in material and paying that $10 minimum fee. I believe the $10 minimum fee covers like 375 pounds worth of material, which that's quite a bit of material. But if we were, the fall program, which has been gone now, I think for somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 years, when we discontinued it, in order to fit it in with the LEAF program, that's the time of year we run the LEAF program. LEAF program typically used to, when we had the fall program, would start immediately following the fall citywide cleanup. So we do, Labor Day, holiday week? That's 5 days worth of garbage in 4 days. And then immediately following Labor Day, then we would do the citywide cleanup, which takes over a 6-week period of time. And then immediately following the end of the citywide cleanup, then we would start into the LEAF program. And the LEAF program, we get calls every year, you're starting too late, you're starting too early, you're stopping too soon, you're stopping too, it's ridiculous, you're out there, you're having the program into December. But typically we do the last week of the LEAF program is the first full week of December. But you have Labor Day followed by the fall cleanup program followed by the LEAF program. And that's, if we go with the fall program, that would be the schedule that we'd be looking at.
Okay.
But like I said, I'm in favor of continuing with what we have right now, where people put small stuff into their carts or their extra bag, they can haul small material to a landfill. You can get 300 and I think it's 75 pounds in for $10. The big items are things that most people can't handle.
Sure.
And, people are using the tag program for that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts, concerns on that? We'll make a decision on that May 15th quick. I'll get with Jim tomorrow, go from there. Okay? Number 4, resolution awarding contract for the repair and recoating in the drive-it exterior solids and disinfection building at the Burlington, Iowa wastewater treatment facility. Don, still up. There you go.
The buildings, or the plant was upgraded in 1982. There's kind of a stucco exterior on all of the process buildings. Some of the process tanks are just concrete, as is the administration building. We did the Headworks building here, I believe it was last fiscal year. It may have been at the end of that previous fiscal year, but it was at that time. That is, the Headworks building is the building that's the north end of the plant. Now we want to do the solids and disinfection building, which is the large complex or conglomerate of buildings attached to each other at the south end. And the last piece will be our digester and its control room that's attached to it. This is the large solids and disinfection building just south of the administration building. We prepared specifications and we sought 3 quotes and received 3 quotes as shown in the council item prepared for the city manager. Precision Coatings of West Burlington was the lowest quote of the 3. The second lowest bidder is the firm that won the bid, the quote for the Headworks building this last time around. You can see from the dates that it was back in last calendar year that these quotes were obtained. That was due to confusion on part of plant personnel as far as which fiscal year we were talking about. And we talked to the person who submitted the low quote, and as long as the council would approve the awarding of the project, they'll wait until the new fiscal year and honor their low quote.
Sounds good. Any questions for Don on that one? All right, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Number 5 is resolution of support for the Blau, I hope I said that right, Lofts LLC rehabilitation project at 425 Valley Street, Burlington, Iowa. Eric.
This is with Y&J developers that are doing the Blau building there at Valley Street. Looking to have it completed here late summer yet, but for tax credit purposes, they just need a resolution of support to kind of strengthen their historic tax credit application, just stating that we support the project and then do have listed in here just a rough estimate on what our tax abatement would be for them, just to show financial commitment from the city, which tax abatement qualifies. So looking at 39 new residential units there and then first floor commercial.
Okay. Any questions, gang? Nope. Moving on. Thank you, Eric. Next is, we're going to set a date for the public hearings, May 18th, 2020. Number 1 will be a consideration of sale of property locally known as 919 North 8th Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Number 2 is consideration of sale of property locally known as 1006 Elm Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. 3 will be a consideration of application for housing and sustainability grant for the Iowa Economic Development Authority Community Development Block Grant Program. D is consideration for the 2019-2020 budget amendment number 1. E is consideration for plans and specifications for the 2020 Seal Coat Streets project. F would be considerations of plans and specifications for the 2019 ADA ramp improvement project. G is considerations for plans and specifications of the 2020 ADA ramp improvement project. And we'll move on to the discussion items. First thing up is the treasurer's report. Stephanie.
So in the packet is March's treasurer's report. Just going through it, there wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. We show a deficit in the general fund because our property taxes, we didn't receive until this month, which we did receive them this month, the middle of the month. So that will show better next time. Other than that, the accounts that have deficits are the grant accounts or project accounts that we're still working in, things that are behind. Anybody have any questions?
I don't, unless you do. When you do, then I have
No.
real questions.
No, thanks.
All right, thank you. Second item for discussion is signage at the riverfront. Nick, fire away.
I brought some blanks.
Okay,
You had talked
Yes, I
last
did.
time about signage for keep off the wall. I had talked to some of my staff down there on the methodology of which we would do it. I printed off, it's a piece of paper, it would be in vinyl. It would look much nicer than this. I think a smaller sign would be the best option if we were to go with something like this. The question that was concerning was how would we apply them to the wall? I'm a little hesitant to tapco them to the face of the wall. I think it would look a little tacky too. However, it probably gets the message across the best. The method that I thought might be the most less intrusive would be, we have plates right now where we put our posts in for the flood wall posts, would be to set them flat on top of the wall and drill 2 holes and use existing bolts that we already have. So not creating any new holes in the wall. I don't know, you would have to have them more frequently for notification. You would have to have them so they're visible.
do you have to take those, would you have to take those off when you put the extensions on?
Yeah, but you'd have to take them out anyway
Yeah.
to put the posts in there, and you would just put them back when you're done. I know that I actually had a call today about skateboarding down on the riverfront, and how they're kind of grinding against the seat walls. Originally, the form liner that was selected was hopefully going to be used to combat some of that, thanks to my part. that got nixed because of the flaking that it did. I know it's all my fault. There are other things that you can do other than signage. However, there is no signage down there that says anything about skateboarding. The chief and I talked about that a little bit last week. If we're going to try and enforce that, there needs to be some sort of signage on that. So I didn't know where you wanted to take this conversation, but I wanted to do a little bit of research to talk to you about where you thought you went with things.
I guess where I'm coming from, you know, we have parking signs and everything else that we put up throughout the community. We just need a couple signs. I don't care if it's even in the grass, or a signpost that says stay off the wall. So when the officers would have to come down, if someone turns in someone on the wall, it's stated you're supposed to not skateboard and you're also supposed to stay off the wall. Now, do I have the greatest hope in the world that they're all going to read those signs and pay attention? No, but at least we made the attempt, and that's what I'm looking for.
Could we just put them at the entrance of the parking lots? No skateboarding, stay off
Or
seat
by the
wall,
sidewalk.
or
somewhere.
stay off barrier wall, I mean, something? Cause then you could probably get away with 6 or 7 signs on the road
I think
front.
skateboarding, you probably could justify that, and, you know, if they are in fact doing that down there and causing damage, they could be dispersed with justified signage. However, on top of the wall, without it right there in their face, I use it as an example.
Sure.
We had the fountain down there that had high chlorine content in it,
Right.
and it had electrical in there. We posted, I don't know, there's 6 signs that were well around that. There was still people that would bathe inside
Yeah.
that. And so I think that we need to have something to try and enforce it. I just don't know what degree you all would be looking for. And I don't know about enforcement on top of the wall. I don't know what kind of code we have that says that you're not supposed to be on there. I know from an liability standpoint, it probably would help if we had some signage that said, you're not supposed to be up there. If you're up there and you fall, it's
Yeah.
on you.
I mean, there is a ledge there if they would slide off. It's not real deep. I was down there walking the other day and a man my age was sitting there with a fishing pole and his legs over the other side. I said, hey man, you really shouldn't be sitting on the wall. Well, I didn't see anything against it. So that's why I'm saying we need to have the signs. However you would decide to administrate that,
Yeah,
I'm fine.
I think the only thing I'd be apprehensive to do is put tap cons in that new wall.
Yeah, I don't
Just
know.
because we've already struggled with minor leaking and stuff. Not that it would do anything year 1 or maybe even year 2, but you know as well as I do, moisture gets in there in
I
the
just worry
winter.
about pitting.
Yeah, well, it'll crack it and it'll,
Yeah, I don't want it to ugly it up. Is there a way we could get our message across without being so brassy?
what if
I
we
mean,
put it opposite on the seat wall? What if we put it opposite of the barrier wall and put it on the seat wall underneath,
On the face
on
of
the
it,
face of it?
facing east.
Then we're not jeopardizing the integrity of the wall,
aesthetically more pleasing, maybe?
and you're not
You
gonna.
could go any dozen of ways to
I
try and
know.
get it on there. It's just, I didn't know what the answer, what y'all wanted to do on this. I just wanted to try and bring information. If you want to have it as an action item, I can do more.
I think we probably need to have a couple of signs down there.
Can you do a sticker, a big clear sticker? I know you'd have to
Well,
replace them
and the other
probably
thing
every
is, as we
month,
talked
but-
about, is there might be some adhesives that you can do to put on the face of the wall. It doesn't take away from having a sign on
Yeah.
the wall, but
Wouldn't actually
adhesives have their
damage it.
problems too. You're putting now adhering some sort of sticky substance to the face of
Right.
the wall.
I
But-
think just a couple of poles, stick it down there at the entrance to the walkways that go down to the flood wall and be done with it. Otherwise, if you do that on top of the wall, you're gonna need it every 10 foot for somebody to be able to see it.
Yeah. What, is there a possibility to reach out to other communities that have a flood wall like, and I hate always comparing us to Dubuque, but somebody like Dubuque and see if they've had an issue with it and what they've done signage wise, maybe they could send you a
I
couple
could,
of
I
snapshots?
could call and talk to them, but I don't know if they have anything.
Probably
Both
not
of-
80 grand
Well,
solution.
but both of their flood walls sit back from the river
That's
too.
probably true, yeah.
Ours,
That's right.
Dubuque's is 30 yards off the water, isn't it?
I've never seen it.
They're a raised berm, okay.
So,
Well, we have to have enough that it makes sense, but right, I don't wanna drill into the riverfront wall, or even, not real enamored with drilling on the top or sticking glue on it, because that's gonna leave residue, so.
And that was the reason why I thought the top with
Yeah.
bolts and patterns that we already have established.
Could you just put a couple on the side of the port, put one on the side of the auditorium, put one on the side of the lift station, or at the
Yeah,
outhouse
and
that's
so I started
there,
looking
I
up
mean,
code as to far
Yeah.
as visibility of signs and the enforcement and the conversations that I've had with the chief about other functions of signage, is that to enforce it, a person in their location is they have to have a visible understanding that they shouldn't be doing such function.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Where would you stop at the riverfront? It's not like there's one entrance in.
That's my
I mean, you
point.
could come in any different way and not see the sign.
Yeah, where the kids were boarding the other day was on the east side of the port. That's where there were more angles for them to jump off and that type of thing, so.
Plus, if they fall, it's a little shorter than
Yeah.
some of the other stuff.
So, you gotta,
Well, and I don't think, last week you made the comparison between the sewer trail, and it's not a trail, but the sewer conduit that runs to the river from Danquit Park, and the flood wall. I mean, it doesn't, a reasonable and prudent person knows that if they sit on a wall that is the edge to a river, that there's a level of risk there.
yeah.
Is it even legally necessary that they're there? I mean,
I-
if you put them up, are people not gonna do it?
Probably not. The
So-
only reason I brought it up is because there were parents with kids who should know better doing it. And if we had one or two signs down along that area, hey, stay off the flood wall. The problem with the sewer trail is it was always accepted
Yeah.
as a sidewalk when I was a kid.
Well, and I think that's as
So,
easy as just
yeah.
putting the sign at the entrance to the parking lots, no skateboarding,
That's
keep an
what
eye
I'm-
on small
that's what I was looking
children.
for.
I mean,
Well, I can, if you would like an action item coming forward next week, I can present
Okay.
one and I can try and create a map that
Yeah.
may give locations of both signs and a post.
I don't think we.
I don't know how that fits in with what will happen with the renovation project, but that's still 2 years out before you
Yeah.
see construction.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have signage every 30 feet on the flood wall. That's not the route that I would recommend that we go. I don't think it would do anything either.
We have to have something. Maybe we can go down there, you can give us a map, what you think that might work, and let's look at it at the next work session.
And I could, the other thing is I didn't anticipate when I rendered my Word document paper sign of, you could probably
probably
put it
put
in
the-
one sign,
Yeah.
you know, rules of the riverfront, stay
Right.
off wall, no skateboarding, blah, 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 and put it as one sign.
Yeah, and probably put the word please in there.
Yeah.
We kind of already have something like that too, right? There was a.
We had some
there was a piece of
signage down
at
there.
the
We have some
visitors' boat
signage
dock.
that you can generate, but I was just trying to come
Yeah,
up
I
with
got you.
something so I could visualize it.
I wasn't thinking anything like a billboard, just like a no parking sign, something like that they see, you know.
Well, I will create an action item then if that's
Okay.
the desire of the council.
It's mine, guys.
I'm all right looking.
I find it a little ridiculous that we have to have this conversation, that we have to tell people to not climb on the flood wall when there's a strong current, a deep river right there, and that you're putting your children's life in danger by letting play on it. We can put signs, but, you gotta own that. I'm sorry if I'm being short here, but I just, we can do something about it, yes, and that's our purpose here, but we shouldn't have to.
Well, the only reason for having a sign is you do have to say, hey, look, we can't do this, like the skateboarding. Unless you put a sign up that says no skateboarding, then that means that you could skateboard or bike or walk or do whatever you're doing, juggling.
I just
So,
wish that we could
I know.
legislate common sense.
And I made an assumption about the skateboarding. Is that a sign that you would like to see happen?
You gotta have something
I
to
just,
give.
I know I had a phone call today about an issue with that, so, I mean, I don't wanna kick people out of skateboarding if you all want them to be allowed to skateboard down there, but.
I would just assume they're not damaging property. And so that's why we have a skateboard park, which unfortunately right now is closed, but hopefully that'll stop May 15th. So, but we don't want them to damage the property, so if it needs to be stated, because we see a lot of activity there, you know, personal, people with personal property have to put those signs up, so I don't wanna litter the riverfront with signs, but I think we need to have something, so if, and that would be maybe an opinion by the chief, so when the officer comes down and says, hey, you can't skate here, it's right there on the wall. Kid can say, well, I didn't see it, okay, fine, well, next time notice has been served.
Now, my question is the city liable just because we put up a wall? Because obviously the traction, the riverfront's always been there before, and we never
Any
had that
property that you
signage.
have, that you own, I mean, you have the ability to have somebody do something on your property and then turn around and sue you.
Okay.
So, I mean,
And I think the difference was before there was a fence there, so they couldn't, it wasn't because the wall's wider and they can sit on it.
yeah.
Okay. Just
Okay,
make it
I'll
pretty.
bring
I don't want
Thanks,
it to
Nick.
be ugly to.
All right, next up was appointments. First up is Airport Authority, Commission Member Elizabeth Van Leck Sally resigned. Dwight Mulch would like to be reappointed to that. He was a good board member. I assume we're okay with the gender on this? Okay, good. And then the Human Rights is reappointing Candy Hillier. And also consider reappointing Den, let's see, I gotta read this 103, I lost it.
Linda Robinson.
Linda Robinson and Dan Powell to new 3-year terms. So, does anybody have any concerns with those? No. Is there anything else from council that needs to be brought up for discussion?
No, just something I wanted to share. The folks out at Walmart borrowed a trailer from Coca-Cola set up a trailer. It's like kind of a food pantry, kind of like a food drive. And anybody wants to take food out there, they'll fill that trailer up. And then actually, Linda, maybe you can help with this. They're looking for spots to donate to, whether it's a pantry or some other kind of food drive. I know you were trying to pull something off the other day, but they saw me in the store yesterday and stopped me and said, hey, can you help with this? So if anybody wants to take food out there, or if someone's got a food pantry that we can put that food to good use, just stop out there and ask for the store manager.
Okay. We do have on the docket, which we keep pushing down the road because we're waiting until we can have people here, is a presentation by Impact 7G on Cascade Bridge, parking passes, and the Friends of Cascade presentation. So those are on the docket. Do you have anything for the future?
Just take advantage of the free trash bag. Let's go ahead and clean up Burlington. I like the idea of people getting together, social distancing with a few people, picking up their neighborhood. Good activity now that the weather is nice for kids to get out and beautify your neighborhood, beautify Burlington. Utilize that free trash bag, and there you go.
Jim, you have something?
We have had a lot of things shut down, as everyone else has. One of the things, I think you're gonna start your inspections on Friday, May 1? Next Monday. So rental inspections will begin the process of starting to get those back online. We're tracking what happens as the governor moves forward with things. I was kind of thinking that, oh, maybe we're gonna be opening City Hall and some of these other facilities at the end of the week, and then we're one of the counties that's still listed shut. But we're trying to figure out when's the right time to do that, and just following and seeing what happens with the announcements of what facilities are opening up when. One of the facilities that's closed is the senior center. Nick mentioned that maybe we should be covering their utility bill while we're not allowing them to be in there, and I think that probably does make sense. So,
Okay.
It's a private account that they have.
it's a private account, so we'll have to make some sort of coordination with them to either reimburse them or somehow to get that paid for the months that we've forced them to be out of the facility. A couple of the accounts, as Stephanie went through the treasurer's report, Recplex and Golf Course are significant deficit accounts right now. I don't know where they're gonna end the year. We're gonna have to essentially transfer from hotel motel enough to cover those deficits. The Recplex, as you think through where things are transitioning, some parts of the state, groups of up to 10 people can get together for sporting. We can't here. We're at least for another 2 weeks shut out of that. We're likely shut out, as talking with Eric, we're likely shut out of Recplex having large events at least through the month of May. I assume that the golf course is probably going to be the same thing for the large weekend events that they have. The pool isn't impacted necessarily significantly if it's through the end of May, but if we go beyond that, June is our big month. So we're going to have to, I mean, that's just one that we'll have to see how that proceeds. And the other big thing for them, summer programming. Now, summer programming is one that, as long as we're starting to see that opening up to where you can have groups of 10 getting together, we can break that up into, he mentioned that looking at how do we break up, I don't know how many kids you typically have, but breaking it up into smaller subsets so that they're not all together at the same time or in the same place. Having some staggered activities or whatever. So there's going to be some modifications likely with that summer programming, but we're hopeful that that's something that can continue, still serve as many as we typically would, but probably with a little bit different structure. Those are the things that I've been, I guess, thinking of offhand, at least right now, with what are some of the things that we're waiting on to see what happens here for opening up.
Yeah, I guess just to put in our thought process, I have real concerns with where they said, open up restaurants and bars at half capacity and stores at half capacity. So that's gonna be a tough one to enforce.
You know, I think the only thing I could think of with restaurants is you have a capacity in terms of what they're allowed to have into the facility, and you already, with some structures, depending on a weekend night, maybe seeing places that were potentially above that. Now you're having to deal, you're correct, with half of that, and how does that get done? And I think restaurant owners themselves are probably a little concerned about how do you operate and make things happen with half
How
the
do you
seating.
comply is what I'm looking at, so. Thank you, Jim. Eric, anything further? Nick? I could tell he was wanting to go.
You may have seen an article in the paper talking about the Tiger Grant. Leah had called me on Friday, and I just wanted to, it talked a little bit about maybe some of the dockage, and I wanted to reiterate after our conversation with you guys, after the boating infrastructure grant was not accepted, I was on the phone with Leo about there's still docking talked about in the Tiger Grant, and we're still going to be able to do some. I just don't know what that looks like yet. After the conversation with her, I didn't know exactly the details, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that there was going to be some that was going to be done, but I don't know what that looks like yet.
Okay.
They're still working through what dissecting that number out looks like, and how those align with what the previous alignments were and how that works with what the Schraders and the visiting docks were going to look like. So I will have that for you at some point.
Okay.
I have a meeting tomorrow with Leo about some other stuff, and I'll press him about that.
Do you have any idea where we're at on the north or in the public boat docks that we have now, the south, north?
So
and the
we met
Schraders?
with Matson today, and they're not going to be able to assess the pilings until we get to later in this week.
Okay.
At about 13 foot, assuming we keep on the track of where we're dropping. At that point, I think he's going to be able to move relatively quickly, and we're going to be able to hopefully get those pilings done sooner rather than later. If we get down to truly 13 foot on the south side, we should be able to, with an equipment rental for a day, get those dockages in there. The big problem on the south side is we still have all those HESCOs up.
Yeah.
And to try and get all that down and then get the other stuff up, it just doesn't work for timing. So we're going to try and get what we can up, hopefully early next week or maybe even Friday, for that dock. So hopefully we keep dropping. We don't get a bunch of rain tomorrow.
I also have a question on the Tiger Grant. At one point in time, I think we were talking about doing that in segments, and if I remember right, then all of a sudden we were told by the DOT it had to be all done at the same time. is there any possibility, and I did reach out to Leo on, I think it was Leo on this, any possibility of going back to the DOT and asking for the permission to do either Main or the riverfront first and do Jefferson Street toward the end of the project to try to give our merchants?
We are gonna be able to break it up and say,
are, good.
it's the bidding procedures that maybe
Okay,
was the.
all right, good.
We can't bid it out in 4 different packages, and I think that was the conversation.
All right, good.
Is they don't want to, they can't accept all those plans, and it's all about accounting, trying to disperse the monies out
Thank you.
appropriately. So yes, but from a physical construction, we'll be able to set the parameters on that. It was all on the front end, I guess I would call it, to try and get the project out to bid.
Okay, good. I
So,
just
yeah,
wanted to make sure.
we'll be able to work with a contractor once we get that bid out, and try and work on the timing. Some of that'll have to be in the documentation, to go out to bid, especially on Jefferson Street, to talk about doing a block by block segment at a time to try and affect, as less of the corridor as possible and to try and move it through it as quick
Yeah,
as
they've
we
been the merchants downtown, specifically on that corridor, have been really hammered here lately, so.
And so Jefferson Street actually won't be next year.
It'll be the fall.
It would be the following year. So Main Street, especially the portion to the south, will be the first concentration because there's some sewer work that needs to happen. And I would think that segment would happen all relatively at the same time. You're talking about a lot less property owners to deal with, the city and BNSF being the largest two. So that section will happen first, and then the next section of Main Street. And then the riverfront and Main Street or Jefferson Street, those can happen probably somewhat simultaneously. But yeah, the road projects won't be. And so actually Washington Street, I haven't done it yet, we have to kick that project back to the following year after Jefferson Street.
Okay.
Just because, we can't have our 2 parallel roadways downtown being worked on simultaneously too. So
You answered-
we're aware of what the concerns would be too, so.
I have a non-related question. Farmers Market, they're looking at moving that away from downtown for the first one. Do you know where the alternate site is they're looking at?
Maybe this year?
That
I
would be
don't. I have
downtown
not heard
Burgers,
any.
probably.
No, yeah, Farmers Market will have their first, the first week, whether it's at May 6th or whatever the date is on that, will not be on Jefferson Street, but after that it will. She doesn't have a spot identified yet to have it, but it has to be on non-city property. They're working on where that can be,
Okay.
so.
Wow.
I just had seen that. She had sent that out on Friday, and they
Is that due
haven't.
to our proclamation? Is that due to the
Uh,
proclamations that we've put forth?
It has to do with our limitation on gatherings of
Gatherings.
50 or more, correct?
Quick question for you, Nick, back to what you were just telling us about the projects and how they're working. At any point in time, are you gonna try and integrate any, stormwater sewer repair or, pumping stations, any of that work, an integrated plan trying to be incorporated into this time-wise?
So, we are with the Main Street portion of it, we're actually doing some sewer separation work.
Okay.
It'll be bid out with it because to try and separate that work underneath the same road.
Would be impossible,
You're gonna pay a
right?
little bit higher price because of the federal requirements with it, but we'd be dumb to not do it because you have to
It'd be-
tear that roadway
yeah.
back up to try and do it, so.
We're still gonna have to pay like Davis Bacon and
Correct.
So you're just cutting out the mobilization costs theoretically, right? Yeah.
But otherwise, we're not doing any stormwater pumping. That comes later in a phase with the flood wall projects, which is probably 3 years out or what? 2 years later after the completion of this one.
Thanks for answering that question about the Tiger. I know the people watching appreciate it. Anything else, Jim? Don, Stephanie, Jess? No? All right. Anything? Matt, these two already got a chance. You? No? All right. We're done. Thank you, everybody.